Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our third webinar in the series of webinars we have prepared for you regarding the joint call for high-performance computing projects. This webinar is dedicated to companies' co-funding capacity topic. My name is Ramona Kaula, and I'm coordinator of the National Competence Center in High Performance Computing, hosted at Luxinnovation. It is the national contact point for high performance computing, high performance data analytics, and artificial intelligence enabled by HPC. Today here with me, there is my colleague Eric Lauer, advisor for corporate R&D and innovation support at Luxinnovation, who will have a presentation for you about the topic of today. And we also have here with us Christian Poli, project manager at the Luxembourg Ministry of Economy. They will be here with us for all throughout the webinar session to answer your questions regarding the call text and the call process or criteria. A short reminder about the joint call HPC. It is structured in two phases. The first phase opened on the 15th of September and is going to close the 15th of November. The second phase for the full project proposal will be between the beginning of January and the end of February next year. In order to ensure that you are fully aware of the evaluation criteria for this first phase, we prepared and set up the free Q&A sessions where we'll be presenting more specifically the criteria of this first phase. And we are happy to be here today for this third session on co-funding capacity for companies to be able to participate in the joint call. With this in mind, I invite you to use the Q&A tab, so questions tab for your questions on the right side of your screen to type there, and we'll take them towards the end after Eric's presentation to answer them. So we are here to answer all your questions, all your doubts about the co-funding capacity, but also the overall process to submit your application and your project. So as you may know, there is also the chat box. If you have technical problems, this is the place where to let us know if sound is not working or visualization of the slides are not working. Just last point, this webinar will be recorded and made available on the Research Industry Collaboration platform for you to watch again if something you missed or if you'd like to rewatch the video. So with this said, I would like to hand over to Eric for his presentation and then to answer your questions. So use the questions tab. Eric, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ramona, for this introduction. So good morning to you all and welcome to this second Q&A session within the joint call for HPC. So in this Q&A session, we will cover the topic of the co-funding capacity for the companies. Here, just again, the involved parties within this call, so the Ministry of the Economy, the FNR, and Luxinnovation. So this is a slide from the previous Q&A session regarding the main eligibility criteria for companies. So if you did not assist in this webinar, the replay can be found on the platform where we go over the different criteria and their implications. So among the main eligibility criteria is the co-funding capacity of the company, which will be the subject of today's Q&A session. So the underlying funding mechanism within this joint call for companies, namely the RDI law, is a co-funding scheme. This means that the company needs to prove that they can co-finance their part of the project. For instance, if a project can benefit from up to 75% of funding, the company needs to demonstrate its capability to finance the other 25%. This is done by demonstrating the financial soundness and viability regarding the company's contribution to the project. The co-funding from the company can stem from different sources, which we will see in a later slide. These include, for instance, equity or a capital increase, free cash flow, and/or loans. So as already seen in the last webinar, and as a reminder on this slide, you will find the eligible costs which make up the budget for the companies. So we have the staff costs, which are the gross salaries and the social charters, the investment costs, the material costs, consumables, the subcontracting, and also the overhead costs. This budget will need to be estimated within the project outline for the phase 1, and it is this budget which will serve to estimate the maximum state aid the company can request and the necessary co-financing it needs to provide. So on this slide, we will see an example of a budget estimation. Here, the eligible project budget amounts to 635,000 euros, which will then be multiplied with the accessible rate, which will depend on the size of the company. So whether you are a small, a medium, or a large company. So this is also a slide as a reminder on the funding conditions, where for the companies there will be a 35% upfront payment. The project can have a maximum size of 700,000 euros, and the aid rates ranging between 65 and 80% based on industrial research, which entails the acquisition of new knowledge during the project. As seen a few minutes ago, the company can rely on different funding sources in order to finance its part of the project. Among these, we have the equity/own funds. So these are the own funds which are within the applicant company, such as accessible reserves or retained earning. Another financing method could be a capital increase. Companies who have not yet accumulated sufficient own funds might need to rely on outside financing for the R&D project in form of a capital injection. There can also be loans. These are either bank or shareholder loans. In the case of loan financing, it should be ensured that this is done with a healthy mix of equity and loan in order to ensure the financial soundness of the company. Finally, the free cash flow can also be used, using the cash generated by the company after taking into consideration the operational cash outflows, investment expenses, and the working capital expenses. The co-financing of the company can, of course, be a mix of these sources. So in the following few slides, we will go over the cash flow forecast and how to document the co-financing capacity within this first phase. So the cash flow forecast is mandatory for each participant company in this joint HPC call. So for startups where the applicant company is younger than 3 years, these will need to provide a detailed cash flow forecast. For SMEs older than 3 years and large companies, a simplified version is sufficient. The templates, both the detailed and the simplified, can be downloaded on the platform in the attachments section. Important points to take into consideration for constructing the cash flow is to base this on realistic assumptions. It should clearly demonstrate the financial viability of the company. Additionally, it is recommended to document the underlying assumptions. And finally, regarding the time frame, this should start latest on November 2022 and cover a period of at least up to 1 year after the project. So on the next 2 slides, we will just see a screenshot of the different cash flow formats. So on this slide, we can see the simplified cash flow forecast. It is based on quarters and documents the cash inflow and outflow for the company. This helps to demonstrate the financial situation of the company, as well as the potential impact of the project, and will also serve as a good exercise for the company to estimate the effect of the project on their cash situation. So here, and I hope it is big enough, On this slide, you see a small screenshot of the detailed cash flow forecast, which allows for a more granular overview of the financial projections of the company. This, coupled with the business plan, which is also mandatory for startups, should give a good understanding of the business case and its financial projections. In any case, whether simplified or detailed, it is important that the company uses realistic assumptions and can document the underlying hypothesis, and that the cash flow forecast serves to demonstrate the financial viability of the company. As a reminder, also from the last webinar regarding the main eligibility criteria, companies who are in difficulty are ineligible for state aids. For instance, a company which has lost more than half of its subscribed share capital due to losses and accumulated losses on its 2021 accounts would be in difficulty. This criteria is assessed both on the applicant level as well as the group level. For instance, a company might not be in difficulty, but the group to which it belongs does. Or another scenario would be that the group is in good financial health, but the applicant company isn't. If a company can and will undertake the necessary steps to resolve the situation, then it can nevertheless become eligible. So this is what we cover in this slide. So if your company is in difficulty based on the last closing accounts, namely those of 2021, the company will need to demonstrate how this situation will be resolved. This documentation should be included in your phase 1 application. For instance, in the case if you have or will complete the capital increase in this year, then you should share this proof during your phase 1 submission. So to conclude on this topic, we will answer the question, what does my company need to prepare for the co-funding capacity, based on whether you are a startup or a large company or a SME older than 3 years. So for large companies and SMEs which are older than 3 years, you will need to submit the simplified cash flow forecast. If you envision to finance your project with external financing, such as loans or capital, information regarding this should also be uploaded. And if your company is in difficulty on the applicant or the group level, and you look to resolve this, then the relevant documentation of this will also need to be shared. So for startups, the one thing which changes is that detailed cash flow forecast is mandatory. The same is true for external financing, as well as if the company is in difficulty. However, it is important to note that the criteria of undertaking in difficulty does not apply to companies which are younger than 3 years on group level. So with this, we come to the end of the presentation, and there will be a final Q&A session coming up on the 7th of November regarding the completeness check for the application, going over all the necessary documentation before the submission on the 15th of November. As a reminder, on the platform, we have an FAQ section, which is regularly updated. However, if your question is not answered there, you can always contact us on the email address shown at the end of this presentation. So with this, I want to thank you all for your attention, and I would suggest that we move on to the Q&A section of this webinar. For this, I hand over the word to Ramona, who will also briefly present an upcoming event of the Digital Innovation Hub.
Thank you, Eric. Thanks for your presentation. I would also like to welcome Dr. Saktivel Sundaram, Program Innovation Manager at the Luxembourg National Research Fund, who just joined us, and to be here for your questions as well. So register for the next Q&A session, as Eric mentioned, but there is also the DIH on tour that stops in front of the cybersecurity week in Luxembourg at the Lux Expo on Wednesday and Thursday next week, 19 and 20 of October. Why I'm bringing it here in this webinar? Well, because there are HPC talks connected to our topic here. More in specific, there will be the Lux Provide, speaking about security on the Luxina supercomputer, but also the University of Luxembourg giving a presentation on HPC contribution to cybersecurity research and advancement into in this field. Once we set that, I would go to check for, yes, I will share firstly the link with you, everyone, to register for the Cybersecurity Week on the bus. And now I am going to check the questions. Okay, so there is a question in the question tab. So says the following: must the cash flow forecast be based on existing business operations, or can estimates from the result of the project we are applying for additional be used? So the cash flow forecast, when does need to start and when needs to end? Eric, I guess.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I can start, and I let maybe Christian complete me afterwards. So when should the cash flow forecast start? This should be at latest November 2022. And of course, if it starts in November 2022, it will cover your existing business operations, but also in the future, and that is also why the cash flow should run above or longer than the project duration, is to see any potential impact of the project on your cash flow forecast. So of course, in the first phase, in the research phase, this will be mainly on the cost side, and also taking into consideration that the scope of this HPC call is industrial research. So there is no direct commercial implication, at least in the first instance. So that meaning, to just summarize my answer, yes, it should cover the existing business operations and how these will evolve in the future, and also reflect the implication of the project on the cash flow forecast.
Thank you, Eric. Anyone else wants to add anything about that?
Yeah, I think Eric gave already a very detailed answer on this. I think to make an assessment of the current situation, it is important to also know the the current financial situation, and therefore you should introduce the existing business operations into the cash flow forecast, and of course then also later on the estimations for the future cash flow.
Great, thank you. I don't see any other questions in the question tab and not in the chat, but I leave a few seconds to wait in case more will come. There's too much sun here on my side. No more questions. Well, yes, indeed, we can share our contacts in case you will have any other questions. There's the research industry collaboration platform for the FAQ, so frequent questions asked. If you want to consult that, it's there, and you can also contact us in case you have questions after the webinar as well. Again, yeah, here we have the DH on tour. It's a nice initiative. I would like you to invite to join. So among other cybersecurity talks on the bus that are related to Industry 4.0, we have the Chief Security Officer of Lux provide to speak about, well, security concerns you may have as a company to use HPC platforms such as Meluxina. He will be able to respond to all your concerns and all the questions you may have regarding how they implement security on Meluxina, but also at the corporate level. And the second speech about how HPC contributes and helps progress in the research on cybersecurity. Okay, the registration link popped up, and I see there is another question about our topic here. So let me check it. If the private partner shares costs for hardware and material during the project, can it be considered as financial contribution? Interesting question.
Maybe I give an answer on this. Yeah, of course, it depends on the details. But in principle, if you have already some materials or instruments that are still not fully depreciated, you can of course include the costs depreciated over the period of the projects, and so this costs can in principle be taken into account. But again, it depends on the specific situation, and to make an assessment on this, yeah, of course we would need then the full details of this.
Thank you, Christian.
Yeah, and maybe just to complete Christian on this point. So the co-financing is in relation to the budget of the company. So you will have a certain budget, and those are then your, as seen in the slide, your staff costs, your equipment, etc. And it is based on that budget that your co-financing will need to be adapted and to be documented. So I hope this complement also answered the question.
Great, thank you. And yes, our participant confirms is the usage of hardware and material that he meant. Good. Any other questions? I invite you to share them now in the questions tab. Don't be shy. We are here for you to answer the questions. Okay. No others. Okay, if there are no other questions, I invite you again to join us for our next webinar session about completeness check on Monday, 7th of November. So we changed the day of the week. You can start, I invite you again to start filling your application in the Research Industry Collaboration platform. So you get acquainted on all the information and requirements that are needed from you to fill in. Don't wait for the last day. And I also invite you to join us for the DIH on tour at the Cybersecurity Week. It's an important topic that companies have at heart. And well, I'll check again with questions. Yes, I see one. Is it required for the partner to put cash on the table for the project? Who wants to take that?
Maybe I can start from the public institutions point of view. For the public partner, does not need to bring anything. The co-funding is not necessary.
Yeah, yeah. I think in the case of the company, of course, as Eric also mentioned in his talk, it's important to show the co-financing capacity. So you should be able to pay your contribution in advance, because the aid will be provided after the end of the projects. So you know that you need to go into own contribution from the beginning. But there are various means of doing this, so it doesn't need to be cash on the table, but you should be able to finance the project.
I hope that was clear. Otherwise, let us know and we can elaborate more on this point. Okay, I see another question coming up. Can you please give an example on the use of equity as a support for financial capacity? So an example of use, okay? Yeah, Eric?
Maybe I can start if I understand the question correctly. So the question is if it's equity which is already inside of the company, such as accessible reserves or retained earnings. There it depends on if the company has generated such equity and can invest this into future developments. I think the other is outside equity. So if we're talking outside investors who contribute into the financial capacity of the company, which is basically a classic investment where a part or the entirety of the funds are then used to cover the co-financing of the company. I hope this answers your question, and I would let Christian add something if I missed something.
No, I think that's clear. Nothing to add.
Nice, thank you. Okay, I see that people are getting questions. We'll wait a little bit more, just in case. No, so I remind you the replay of this webinar will be available on the Research Industry Collaboration platform together with the slides that you can download. Should be available after we conclude this webinar. If you want to consult them again and to share with your colleagues or your collaboration partner to discuss the points that have been presented today. You can also find there the replays from the previous webinars and also the link for the registration to the next webinar. I remind you the 15th of November is the deadline for the first phase. After this, we'll check what you sent to us as application, and we'll come back with you to you with feedback. And yeah, we'll let you know if you are eligible and you have completed and given all the information needed for the second phase, and if you are accepted for the second phase. Your proposal has been accepted for the second phase. Okay, I don't see other questions. I guess we can conclude here. We are available, as we already mentioned, for other questions if they come up after the webinar. So don't hesitate to get in touch with us. We are there to support you all along the process. And yeah, so said that, I thank all the speakers here for their availability and for sharing their knowledge and being present to answer all our questions today. And I'll see you on the 7th of September, 7th of November, sorry, with the last Q&A about completeness check. I wish you a great day and see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.